Alright, so now how do philosophies toward the role of government affect health policies? The philosophies toward the role of government in healthcare and public health significantly influence the types of health policies that are favored. These philosophical views are among the most fundamental differences in US society, particularly when it comes to advancing public health. The debate centers on whether the government should play a larger role or whether market forces should determine health outcomes. One of the central debates is between social justice and market justice, two contrasting approaches to what the role of government in health is. Social justice advocates for the equitable distribution of health services as a social responsibility. It emphasizes that healthcare is a right and society should ensure that all individuals have access to it, regardless of their ability to pay. Market justice, on the other hand, emphasizes individual responsibility for health. It states that people should be accountable for their own health decisions, and healthcare should be treated as a commodity available to those who can afford it. Alright, so now what I have here is table 5.2. And this table contrasts the key characteristics of market justice and social justice, offering a clear comparison between these two philosophies regarding the distribution of health services. And it's a useful way to understand how each perspective shapes health policy decisions. There's some key differences. Market justice emphasizes individual responsibility, where healthcare is treated as a commodity and access is based on personal income and choice. Social justice focuses on the collective responsibility of society to ensure equal access to healthcare, viewing it as a fundamental right that should be provided based on need rather than ability to pay. And then these differing viewpoints lead to vastly different policy approaches. Market justice may support policies that favor privatization, competition, and minimal government intervention, while social justice often results in policies that promote universal healthcare coverage, government intervention, and programs designed to reduce health disparities. And the table can help us understand how different countries or regions might approach healthcare reform, depending whether they lean more toward a market-driven model or a more equitable government-supported model. Alright, now what I have here is table 5.3, which builds on the comparison between market justice and social justice, specifically highlighting the implications each philosophy has for public health policy and practice. And this table illustrates how these philosophical approaches influence decisions on access to healthcare, funding, and public health interventions. So for market justice, these are policies that are driven by market justice, tend to focus on individual responsibility and limited government interventions in healthcare. This approach may lead to policies that prioritize private health insurance, competition among providers, and personal choice, but also may result in inequities in access to healthcare, particularly for lower income populations. In contrast, social justice emphasizes collective responsibility and the need for equitable access to healthcare for all individuals. Policies informed by this philosophy support universal coverage, government-funded programs, and efforts to reduce health disparities. The goal is to ensure that healthcare is not a privilege for those who can afford it, but a right for everyone. Now, understanding these implications helps policymakers navigate the complex trade-offs between equity, efficiency, and individual freedom when creating or reforming health policies. The table provides a clear framework for assessing the potential outcomes of each approach in different societal contexts. Now we will get into the three questions or issues as to how we apply these principles. So the first one is the question of a right to healthcare. The right to healthcare is considered a foundational element in health justice and is recognized in international law, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the World Health Organization's Constitution. However, in the United States, there is no generalized right to healthcare. While healthcare can be established as a right within a state's constitution or through federal legislative action, the issue remains unsettled. Most developed countries have incorporated the right to healthcare into their constitutions or establishing it through legislative action, often resulting in universal coverage, but not the US. The internationally recognized right can't be enforced in the US unless recognized by a US Constitution or incorporated into the legislature. While healthcare is internationally recognized as a human right, it cannot be enforced in the US unless it is explicitly recognized in the US Constitution or through legislative action. So, why is the issue unsettled in the US? The US Constitution does not explicitly mention healthcare or right to health, though it outlines various individual rights. The Supreme Court has inferred some rights, such as the right to travel or the right to privacy, but the right to healthcare has not been inferred. Now, state courts have taken action, such as Indiana State Supreme Court, addressing the meaning of a license to practice medicine. There was a case where a physician refused services to a pregnant lady despite being offered prepayment and knowing there were no other qualified physicians available in the area. Unfortunately, this led to the death of the woman and child. The court concluded that there were no legal application for Eddingfield to treat the patient and upheld the trial court's decision in favor of the defendant, which established the no-duty principle, which holds that healthcare providers do not have an obligation to provide health services. So while there is no nationwide right to healthcare, there are important exceptions. For example, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act of 1986 mandates that hospitals and emergency care providers must treat anyone with an emergency condition regardless of their ability to pay. States also have the ability to establish their own healthcare rights, which has led to varying healthcare policies across the US. So examples could be states like California, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Illinois could have established universal healthcare decades ago, just for an example. All right, so now how does public health balance the rights of individuals with the needs of society? A key issue in public health is finding the balance between individual rights and the needs of society. And this balance can create tension between what the individual wants and what society needs. So an example we use is the driver's license. The courts have made it clear that driving is a privilege, not a right. Because of this, states have the ability to regulate driving without violating individuals' rights. States can set restrictions like minimum age, driving permits, and requirements for renewals. The goal is to reduce the risks of motor accidents, which are common causes of death and disability. Two groups at higher risk are the adolescents and the elderly. So for example, elderly drivers may need to undergo hearing and vision tests or re-examinations in some states. And the type of risk also plays a role in determining how we balance individual rights and needs of society. So an example would be of self-imposed risk, which refers to risk that an individual knowingly takes on through their actions. An example we use here are motorcycle helmet laws, as these laws are designed to protect motorcyclists but can be seen as infringing on an individual's right to make their own choice. While helmets protect riders, some argue that it should be their decision to wear one. The next up we have imposed risk, which is the risk that individuals face without having control over it. So an example here could be the exposure to environmental toxins from a factory. Because in this case, individuals may want clean air, but they can't control the pollution they're exposed to. This imposes a health risk, and interventions must be external to the individual because they can't just change their behavior. So therefore, government regulations such as emission standards are needed to protect the public from these risks. So now how can public health influence health law and policy? Public health is strongly influenced by politics. Because it is, public health often works to influence health law and policy. Now, generally, public health organizations cannot financially contribute to political campaigns, but they can advocate for issues such as climate change or occupational safety. Lobbying is prohibited, which means public health groups cannot pay someone to persuade an official to vote a certain way. However, they can advocate for general policy approaches without directly telling lawmakers how to vote. Now, many organizations are involved for advocating for public health, such as the American Public Health Association, Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, National Association of County and City Health Officials, Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health, Society for Public Health Education, Trust for America's Health, and then the Public Health Institute. Now, some key steps for successful advocacy. First, you need to carefully draft and get feedback on the message. It's important to communicate the message clearly and effectively, and feedback from stakeholders or experts can help refine the message. The next step is to carefully choose the spokesperson or persons to fit the audience. since a spokesperson should resonate with the target audience, and their credibility and expertise will enhance the message's effectiveness. And then deciding on the method for delivering the message, which always means choosing the right channels. Could be through the media, public speeches, social media, etc., for getting the message across. The next, you need to define what you want to accomplish, which is where you set clear goals for the advocacy effort, and this helps ensure that the message is focused and measurable. Then decide on the audience you want to reach. So identify who the advocacy efforts should target. So it could be policymakers, the public, or specific communities. Then you need to research and evaluate impact, which is where you have to gather data to evaluate the success of advocacy efforts and adjust strategies if needed to improve outcomes. Finally, you need to understand the process of lawmaking opposition. To effectively influence health law and policy, public health advocates must understand the lawmaking process, be aware of the arguments from the opposition, and present strong, convincing arguments to support public health policies. And that is it for this lecture. Thank you all for your time.